Why have we come to earth? Do you remember? Why have we taken birth? Do you remember?
Good morning. How are you this morning? Good. It's warming up for those of you who were a little cold earlier. But it's good because we're talking about living in the cold. No, living in the flow. Flow. And so we're living in the flow. I want to start off with, and this is actually this is the last Sunday that we're working with Emma Curtis Hopkins, Chapter 7 out of Scientific Christian Mental Practice, which is called The Spring of Life. And we've been looking at a kind of alternate side called The Water of Life. And we've been looking at that idea of the flow of spirit and how that works in our lives and how we can be in alignment with that flow, be in harmony with that flow. So today we're as we look at the topic of living in the flow, we'll start off with a quote from Ernest Holmes. The law flows through us because it flows through everything. And by law, Ernest Holmes, and I know many of you know this, but just in case you're new here, by the law, Ernest Holmes means the creative process, the how it happens. We say that everything is love and everything is law. Spirit is love, pure, unadulterated love, complete love. You know, no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, Spirit is just completely in love. Every mystic who's ever touched that Spirit has had that experience of that deep, deep, deep love. And so Spirit is pure love. But it also works to create through this process called the law. And the law is the law of cause and effect, that what we put out comes back to us. That as we sow, so do we reap. And so that is the law, and it is the creative process of the universe. You might say it's the growth process of nature. So he says the law flows through us because it flows through everything. This is the crux of the whole matter. That's great. You know, he's saying this is the summary of all the Science of Mind textbook. It's on page 52, by the way. So, you know, everything that comes after that is just kind of built, you know, extra. This is the crux of the whole matter. The law must flow through us in order to manifest for us. So the flow is the infinite one. It's the infinite one. Imagine for a moment this infinite field of potential energy that can show up in any way. And because the infinite is intelligent, there is an intelligent, it's an infinite intelligence. It's as it's been called, a thinking stuff. It has manifested itself as this universe, as planets, as stars, as trees, as water, as animals, and eventually evolves itself as a conscious self, us, and whatever else is of conscious on this planet, like dolphins or whatever, that we're maybe not quite aware of. But it starts to evolve consciousness, and we get to play in consciousness. And the thing with consciousness is we have choice. We get to play consciously in the flow. Have you noticed that rocks don't get to play consciously in the flow? They don't kind of choose where they're going to be. Yesterday I was watching Diana Wolstead moving flagstones from the back to the front. Those flagstones didn't sit there and go, well, I'd really like to be more over by the labyrinth than I would back here in back of the cottage. No, Diana got to place them where she wanted to place them. She made the conscious choice. Okay? And so rocks don't have consciousness, but we get to choose. That's the good news and the challenging news, right? So because we are aware of it, we are both in the flow, we are the flow, and the flow goes through us. All of it. Okay? So what is it that's flowing? Ernest calls it the law of creativity. It's the creative process of the universe, and it is constantly and continuously flowing through us, constantly and continuously creating. We can use it, we can't stop it, but we can direct it. We get to direct the creative flow of the universe. Isn't that cool? Yeah. We get to direct the creative flow of the universe in our lives. It's constantly moving into form and experience, and that is the real good news, bad news, right? Constantly and continuously moving into form and experience. Mary Morrissey says that where you place your I am begins to concretize, I don't know if that's a word, but she used it, concretize your results, circumstances, and situations. Where I place my I am, where I place that description of who I am, begins to show up in concrete form, in form. You know, we talk about in quantum physics, everything is potential energy, wave, until it starts to become a particle as it shows up, as the observer expects it to show up. Okay? That's in a way using the I am. The I am, which is the name of God. You know, when Moses asked God, you know, what is your name? It's I am as I am. Okay? So we're basically using, declaring our name of God, I am. That's our God name. You may think your name is Phil or Judy or whatever, but your real name is I am as I am. And I get to declare that into form as I want to. And so we declare that life force into existence. Whether we're doing it consciously or unconsciously, we're always directing it. Take a breath. Oh, I'm not supposed to say it anymore. I got some feedback that some people don't like that. Okay, I'm going to take a breath. If you want to join me, it's okay. So what is my real I am? What is my real I am? It shows up as our life, doesn't it? I love Michael Beckwith's phrase where he says, whatever it is that you're thinking, it's not a secret because it shows up as your life. We don't think in secret. Okay? Our I am, conscious or unconscious, shows up as our life, and here's the good news, it can be changed at any time. It can be changed at any time. One of my favorite phrases from Ernest Holmes is, principle is not bound by precedent. In other words, God does not care what it created before or how you used it to create before. Okay? Just like electricity doesn't care what you plugged into that outlet the last time. If you plugged in a toaster and this time you're plugging in a hairdryer, it doesn't sit there and go, I just want to flow into the toaster, I just want to make toast. I really don't like it that you're plugging a hairdryer in this time. It doesn't do that. It doesn't care. It doesn't have an agenda. It's just if you plug something in to the outlet and the way the electricity flows, it just flows, right? Whoa, it's flowing. It's popping. We're hot. The objective mind alone may consciously decide what is to happen. All subjective decisions are merely conclusions built on already accepted premises, ideas, or thought patterns. In other words, our subjective decisions, our subjective mind, what it is there, we already, at one point in time, we consciously decided that was the way it was. And then we turn it over to our subjective to continue to replicate that and replicate that and replicate that. Okay? Ernest goes on to say, the conscious mind may change these thought patterns and thereby cause a different flow of energy and intelligence toward the object of its desire. So just because you had the thought once, just because for 20 years you've been walking around going, I'm not good enough, nobody loves me, or whatever it is, doesn't mean you have to spend the next 20 years doing the same thing. You can change it. You can change it this moment. And I know most of you know that. But it's good to be reminded of that. It's good to get conscious of it. What is it that is actually manifesting in my life? My favorite question when I look at certain messes in my life, I occasionally have messes in my life. I frequently have messes in my life, okay? Let's just be honest. And my favorite question to ask is, okay, what did I say yes to? The universe is constantly saying yes to it, to me. What did I ask it to say yes to? How did I direct that flow to create that mess? Because if I can understand that, then I can start to change it and say, what do I want to say yes to instead? How do I want to direct the flow instead? Because the universe is a flow, life is in constant flow. And this is also where sometimes we get tripped up a little bit. Life is in constant flow. Okay? In other words, things are always changing and evolving. Things are always changing and evolving. And so two of our biggest blockages are, first of all, wanting things to stay the same. Yesterday I saw a Facebook post from somebody saying with one of those things that I remember and love it back when gas was 20 cents and they were raising the minimum wage to $1 and everybody thought all businesses were going to go out of business because they were raising the minimum wage to $1 and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, that's nice. That was 50 years ago or whatever it was. It's changed. We also thought $10,000 a year was a really good income back then. We couldn't live on that these days. So wanting things to stay the same. Our mind likes sameness. Have you noticed? It feels safe, and it also doesn't have to think very much. It doesn't have to operate very much. It gets to be lazy. Our minds like laziness. I remember there's a bunch of statistics out there that are something like, most people, when after they graduate from high school, never read a book again. Isn't that amazing? And probably the ones that some people do read are just trash novels. They're not really things to learn something about. Now, I'm grateful because I love this kind of a community because we don't do that. We read, right? That's why I have a bookstore there. And so we do constantly say it. But most people, and most people represent the mind. Most people represent the mind. That subconscious part that wants to stay, relatively speaking, unconscious, just like the rocks. So we want things to stay the same. The second thing is we don't understand how the universe is flowing. Okay? See, I can want water to work in a certain way. I can sit here and say, I got a house up on that hill and there's a river flowing right down there. Why can't that river just flow up that hill? Okay? And no matter how much I want it to, no matter how much I ask for it to, no matter how much I beg God to make that river flow uphill, it's not going to do it, is it? Because that's not how water works. Water flows downhill. And unless I put a pump and some piping and go to work and do something to shift the flow up to my house, it's never going to get there. Right? And so oftentimes, we want the universe to work our way. Instead of looking and saying, how does the universe actually work? How does that play out? I have to laugh because we recently did a survey of some people in the church, and there's a mentality known among all churches. This is across all churches. A lot of people want church my way. I want church my way. I want my favorite music played, my favorite songs played. I want the talk to be my kind of talk. And I love it because, one person's idea of a great talk is the minister quotes from the Bible a lot. Another person's great idea of a great talk is the minister never quotes from the Bible. Okay? The minister's talk is short, the minister's talk is long, the minister's talk is exactly this long. All that stuff. And each person, of course, has a whole different idea. Everything has to be done the way that I like. And, of course, the minister has to act the way that I want and think that he or she should. Right? Now, of course, ministers, by the way, do the same thing in reverse. I want the congregation to act the way that I want the congregation to act, and give the amount of money that I want them to give, and do the kind of volunteer where I want them to give. And it's a game. We all play it, right? We're all caught in this dance until we stop saying, "Wait, time out." And by the way, the reason this is important is because how we do one thing is how we do everything. So this is how I do, say, church. This is also how I do my relationships. I want my spouse to act this way. I want my kids to act this way. I want my parents to act this way. I want my friends to act this way. Okay? It's how we do our jobs. It's how we do our body. It's how we do our money. It's how we do our politics. It's how we look at the whole world. They should all act this way. Right? but it's how we do it. Better questions. The core question that I ask is, what does my soul want? Because when I'm working on, it should be this way, and that word should is the kicker. Once you hear your mind going, it should be, they should be, I should be, we're into this little dance of it's not right the way it is, and we're out of the flow. We're not working with the flow as it is. Because if it should be that way, guess what? It would be that way. Okay? If it should be that way, it would be that way. And then we get to make the choice of either that is the way that I would like it to be. So if I would like a more peaceful world, instead of saying, well, it should be that way and somebody else should do it that way, we start to say, you know what? I would like there to be a more peaceful world, and so I'm going to start to do what I can to create a more peaceful world. That's different than they should or it should. That's, I'm going to take that on. That really calls me. That's what my soul says. Yes, that is true. It would be wonderful if we had a more peaceful world. Other questions. What am I to learn from this? If I'm in a situation that I'm finding I don't like, what am I to learn from this? If it's inconvenient, if church or relationship or job or body or money is not going my way, what am I to learn from this? You know, I'd love to have the body that I had when I was 26 years old. Wouldn't most of you? Not the mind, okay? But the body. Everything works well. You know, that's how mine was at 26. I was in great shape. I could go hiking where I wanted. What am I to learn from this? Let me to learn why it is this way. If something is different than I want, maybe I should go find out. Why is it that way? And go ask questions. If my spouse always cuts the ends of the ham off, you know that story, or some of you do, I can go ask, why do you do that? If he or she always leaves the cap off the toothpaste, why do you do that? Rather than you shouldn't do that, just why do you do that? And then we can have a discussion about it. If I'm upset, what within me is upset? Course in Miracles always says we're never angry or upset for the reason we think we are. How's that? I'm never upset for the reason I think I am. What if every time you got upset, you caught yourself and went, wait a minute, I'm upset, but I'm never upset for the reason that I think I am. So what is it that I'm really underneath it? Now, I might have something that's a trigger incident, okay? Recently I had an interchange with a person where there was what appeared to be a very small trigger incident, and the person ended up crying and storming off because of the very small trigger incident. And so we had to ask, and later on got to explore the question of what was the real upset underneath that. And of course there was something underneath that. So if I'm upset, what within me is upset? So when we start to do this stuff, we start to move ourselves back into working in the flow, back into living in the flow. What is the flow? And how am I interacting with it? Am I directing it where I want to go? Or am I reacting to situations and circumstances out here as they are? Because if I'm reacting, I'm not living in the flow. So this week I would like to invite us to have 3 opportunities to practice this. Okay? So the first one is become aware of the flow. If you don't know there's a flow going on, right? You don't even know that you're dancing and playing in this flow of energy. There are a lot of people running around this planet, not you guys, but there are a lot of people running around this planet who have no awareness that this is even happening. Okay? I know you guys have an awareness of it, but we can all deepen that awareness. We can deepen the experience. How is it? How many of you have had an experience where some of you realize, you kind of get that you're in this whole flow of the universe, and you start to see the oneness of it, you start to see the flow of it, okay? And you've had that experience. And if you haven't, open up and be willing to have that experience. Just simply say to the universe, I'm willing in a wonderful way to have that experience. So this week, start to become aware, more aware of the flow around you. Just notice it. Just notice it. And what that takes is to pay a different kind of attention than just the intellectual attention. but to maybe pay that, what I call energetic intention, soul intention with the flow. We start to move from our head into our heart, into our gut, into our wherever it is that you feel that energy. So take some time this week to just become aware of that flow, watch in the life around you. Then secondly, become aware of where you're directing the flow. Okay, there is this flow happening. Where am I directing it? What is my I am concretizing? What is it that is making it concrete? And if you want to know, you just look at your life. You say, you know what, some of these concrete results I really like. Some of these I don't like. And some of these, they're okay, but they could be better. They're not bad. But as a friend of mine says, don't let good be the enemy of better. The universe has infinite source, infinite play. How good can your life get? And so just notice, where am I concretizing? Become aware of where I'm directing the flow, both consciously and unconsciously. And by the way, that unconsciously, again, I mentioned it last week, I'll mention it again this week, that's where it's fabulous to have a prayer partner or a practitioner to help you to become aware, to see the results, and to see the results that you're working with and creating, and how that might be. Because oftentimes, we're not sitting there saying, I am poor. I want to be poor. I choose to be poor. Most of us don't run around doing that. I want to be sick. I want to be lonely. We don't walk around doing that, right? But we have some sort of an unconscious belief that's running around. And while on one hand we're saying, I am this, in the back of the mind there's a little voice saying, no, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're this. Who do you think you are? Okay? That's the unconscious. And guess what's causing a major portion of the running of your show? Okay? Finally, the third one. Play with directing the flow in a direction you want. Take something in your life that you would like to have a greater experience of the flow in, and consciously play with it. Imagine that you've got this absolute infinite flow of the universe moving through you, and you get to, last week we talked about imaging, we talked about empowering words. You get to direct the flow through your mental images, your thoughts, and your empowering words in the direction that you want to go. Take something and play with it this week. Something tangible, something you can say, wow, I can really see the flow happening. I can really experience it happening. It's one thing to know about this stuff. It's another thing to know it by actually playing with it and experiencing it. So this week I'm going to ask you, as my favorite Will Smith quote, to get jiggy with this, okay? To start to really play with it and to work with that flow, okay? So that's the three things this week. Become aware of the flow. Become more aware of it. Secondly, become aware of where I'm directing my flow. What is it that I'm using my I am to make concrete? And third, play with directing the flow in a direction you want. And what I'd love for you to do is, if you take this on and work with it, come back next week or a couple weeks and tell me what your results are. Share how this worked for you. Would you be willing to do that? Yes. Great. I'm going to close with a quote from Ernest. When the law of circulation is retarded, stagnation results. And I want to preface this for a moment. We oftentimes use the law of circulation to talk about just money, okay? But the law of circulation isn't about just money. Money works with that, but so does body, so does love, so does everything else. Creativity, everything is playing with the law of circulation. So I just want to be really clear about that. When the law of circulation is retarded, stagnation results. It is only as we allow the divine current to flow through us on and out that we really express life. The law of giving and receiving is definite. Michael Beckwith one time was interviewed after he'd done the movie The Secret, which is all about the law of attraction. Attraction sounds like, bring it to me, bring it to me, bring it to me. And he says, it's really not the law of attraction. It's the law of radiation. Who am I? And as I put that out into the universe, who I am, as I radiate that out into the universe, that's what the universe sends back to me. Who am I? And allowing myself to be the highest and greatest person that I can be and radiate that out into the universe. And the universe has no choice, because that's the law of sending that right back. So let's pray. So we live in a universe of flow. I'm so grateful, because the universe of stagnation would be boring. We live in a universe of absolute infinite flow, of abundant good, of deep, deep, deep love, of complete wholeness and life energy. We live in this universe. We live in it right here, right now. We are one of this infinite presence that is always and constantly creating anew, creating anew, creating anew. We are one of that. We are expressions of that creation, and we are expressions of the creative power of the universe. We are directors of the flow of the universe in our own lives. And so I speak my word that this week, each of us becomes more conscious of that direction. Each of us becomes more conscious of that flow. And that we have a greater and more wonderful experience of truly directing that flow for the highest and greatest good in our lives. We take off whatever we have used as a ceiling and walls in our box, and we kick that out and we say, how good can I stand it? Bring it on, God. I choose greater good than I've ever experienced or even imagined possible before. I allow the flow of the universe to move through me, and I direct it consciously and clearly with my objective mind where I want it to go. I say yes to that flow. I say yes to the true nature of that flow, which the true nature is love. The true nature is life energy. The true nature is abundant good. The true nature is creativity and wisdom. The true nature is joy. And I say yes to that as the reality of my life in a greater and greater and greater expression than it ever has been before. And so for the magnificent joy that comes out of this, and for all the expressions of this joy and how it shows up in each of our lives, I am grateful. Ever so grateful. For the flow itself, that infinite presence that is this life, I'm grateful. And for each of us who says yes to this and plays with this flow, consciously with this flow, I'm ever so grateful. Because I know that as each of us opens up to more flow, we open up to more of that flow in this entire world, and we lift the entire world. And so in great gratitude, I release this word into a law, that law of creativity that moves it into form, moves it into expression in the most beautiful and wonderful ways in our lives. We don't have to figure out the how. We let the universe figure out the how. That law takes care of the how. We just simply say, yes, I am willing to have that flow directed in my life for greater and greater good. And it is done, and it is so. And together we say, and so it is. Thank you.
To love, serve.